Have you ever felt like someone is watching, following, or even spying on you? Being followed by someone is definitely not the kind of experience you want to go through in your life, especially when it starts to put you in danger. This is exactly what happens to the main character in the movie, who was being followed by a stalker. But despite this, no one believed her and she had to go through this nightmare all by herself. Hello girls and guys, this is V and you're watching Movies Hunter. So the movie I am going to be talking about in this video is a drama horror thriller film released in 2022 called Watcher. In the opening scene, we see a loving American couple named Julia and Francis. They are excited to relocate to Romania and explore their new home. Now Francis is fluent in Romanian, but Julia isn't. Because of this, Julia has trouble communicating with the locals. Anyway, later at midnight, Julia wakes up and checks out her neighborhood through a large window in their room. She notices a man watching her through his window from across the street. But Julia doesn't pay attention to him and returns to bed. But as days pass by, she notices that the man from earlier is watching her every single night. Yike! At first, Julia tries to ignore him. But when this becomes like a regular thing, it really creeps her out. One night, the couple come across a crime scene which looks like someone has just been murdered. Although they couldn't learn what exactly happened, they get to know about the case from the news the next morning. They learned that a woman who was missing for days has been murdered. She was found dead by her boyfriend at their apartment. Julia is now beginning to get worried as the incident happened just a couple of blocks from their apartment. So she tells Francis about the man who stares at her at night. She even suspects that the man might be watching her during the day as well. Later that night, Francis invites a couple for dinner as he works with the husband. When Francis brings up the last night incident, Francis's friend reveals that the woman's head was chopped off. Oh my god, pack your bags already. Anyway, the authorities believe that this is the work of a serial killer who is known as the Spider. Julia is now getting even more paranoid as she doesn't feel safe in her new neighborhood. When she does some research, she learns that the Spider has brutally killed many women in the past. Julia is disturbed by the details of the cases as they are very disturbing. I would have told you in detail, but I don't want this video to be age restricted or demonetized, so better watch the movie. Anyways, Julia is now so frightened that she feels like someone is following her everywhere. So she enters a movie theater to have some fun and forget about the Spider. But surprisingly, a man walks in and sits directly behind her. Julia gets so uncomfortable that she leaves the theater right away and doesn't even bother to see the face of the man. If it was me though, I would have definitely turned back and looked him straight in the face. But then again, it would be really frightening to be followed by someone, unless it's just YouTube, so please follow us really by clicking subscribe. Anyway, Julia then goes to the nearby market to buy some groceries. Surprisingly, the man from the theater also followed her there. Julia tries to get a look at his face, but the man creeps her out. So she quickly flees through the back door and runs for her life. Later that night, Francis notices that something is bothering Julia. When he asks her what's wrong, Julia tells him everything that happened at the market. So Francis decides to go to the market to check the security footage. Although Julia identifies the man, there is no solid evidence that the man was following her. So either Julia is just being paranoid or the man is really smart and he knows what he's doing. Although Francis doesn't find anything suspicious about the man, Julia still can't stop thinking about the incident. Because of this, she doesn't go anywhere the next day. On top of that, Francis will be returning home late at night, so to pass the time, she befriends her next-door neighbor, Irina, who invites her to have some drinks. Now, Irina is a very bold and confident woman who gives off "don't mess with me, man, or you will regret it" kind of vibes. She even shows Julia a gun which her boyfriend Christian gave her for protection. She also tells Julia that she should be more confident and tell people whom she doesn't like to go fuck themselves. With her newly found confidence, Julia decides to confront the man from the window later that night. She sees that the man is still standing at his window, staring. I mean, does this guy have nothing else to do, or is this his profession, to stare at girls all day? What the heck? Anyway, to confirm whether the man is staring at her or not, Julia waves at him. And guess what? The man waves back. Goosebumps, man. Julia is now convinced that the man in the window is the same man who followed her before. So she decides to call the police and tell them about the man. The officer wants Julia to come with him and identify the man. However, she refuses as she is scared to even look at him. So Frances decides to accompany the officer and take a look at the stalker. They learn that the man in the window is the same guy who was at the market as well, and his name is Daniel. But instead of comforting Julia, Frances says that this is all just a big misunderstanding and Julia is getting worried over nothing. This breaks Julia's heart as she was expecting that at least her husband will believe her. One day, Julia sees Daniel on the streets and decides to spy on him. Now at this point, Julia might just become the creepy stalker villain instead of the one who is being followed, but let's see. Julia follows him all the way to a club where he works as a janitor. There, Julia also comes across Irina, who surprisingly works there as a dancer. When Julia asks her about Daniel, Irina says that she doesn't know anything about him. He is basically a nobody. Irina also tells Julia that she should hope that she is wrong because it is better to live with uncertainty than being murdered and dying with the words, "I told you so." Later that night, Julia hears a commotion in Irina's apartment. Fearing that something might be wrong, she begs the landlady to open Irina's apartment immediately. However, there is no sign of Irina inside. The next day, Christian comes looking for Irina. Julia informs him that Irina never returned home and she must be busy with work. She then asks Christian to accompany her to confront Daniel in his building. However, no one answers the door. When Christian leaves, Julia decides to knock one more time. To her surprise, an old man answers the door. Later that night, a police officer comes to see Julia and is accompanied by Daniel. Surprisingly, Daniel has made a complaint that Julia is stalking her and that she even threatened her father. What the heck? So to resolve the issue, the officer asks them to shake hands and forget the incident. As if. So despite all the cells in her body telling her to slap him hard, Julia reluctantly agrees to shake hands as she doesn't have any proof against him. Well, she could have recorded a video of him stalking from his window and used it as proof, but I guess the writers wanted to add more mystery and add more watch time, but anyways. Later that night, Julia accompanies Frances to a company party. There, she sees Frances cracking up some jokes in Romanian to make his boss and co-workers laugh. But now that Julia is able to understand Romanian a little bit, she realizes that Frances was making jokes about her and her obsession with the spider. This breaks Julia's heart and she abruptly leaves the party. But instead of going after Julia and making her feel loved, Frances chooses to go back, leaving Julia all alone. Left with no choice, Julia boards a subway and heads home alone. But coincidentally, she notices Daniel sitting in the near-empty car. She tries to ignore him and avoid making eye contact, but Daniel goes to her and tries talking to her. So Julia finally confronts him and asks him why he is following her. Now Daniel replies his life is very boring. So after taking care of his father all day, he would simply go to the window and just look at people to see what they're doing in their life. Okay. Just then, Julia sees his shopping bag and notices what appears to be the outline of a head. Yes, a head. But instead of reacting right away, Julia swiftly gets off the subway and walks straight to her apartment. She quickly begins packing her belongings as she wants to leave right away. But she then hears music playing in Irina's apartment. Believing that Irina is back, she goes to check on her. But instead, she finds Irina's headless body. Soon after which, Daniel smothers her with a plastic bag. When Julia regains consciousness, Daniel tells her how he killed Irina and how he hid the body in the closet when Julia and the landlady enter the apartment. Just then, Frances returns home and calls for Julia. When Julia tries calling for help, Daniel slashes her throat. Despite bleeding severely, Julia attempts to crawl to Irina's table to grab the gun, but she has no strength left in her. Daniel then lies next to her and watches her take her final breath. Just then, Frances calls Julia's phone, which he hears ringing inside Irina's apartment. When he goes to check, he sees Daniel leaving the apartment. As Frances walks towards him, Julia grabs Irina's gun and shoots Daniel dead. It turns out that she faked her death and still had some strength left in her. She walks out of the apartment and stares at Frances. Her face is screaming, "I told you and you didn't believe me." Yep, and so this was the story of Watcher. Subscribe, like the video, and I will see you in the next hunt.